Downloadable content, a media to expand on already released games to add extra content, that in recent years has been exploited to add content that should have been in the game for an extra price. In recent years though, downloadable content, also known as DLC for short, has become a huge part of gaming, whether it's to scam players out of money or just to add general content to a game, expanding its world and characters. And of course, with our favorite blue rodent being around to see the advent of the technology and even pioneering it in a sense, there's been a lot of DLC in the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise. So enough with the corny ass intro. Sonic the Hedgehog DLC, you read the fucking title. Before I start though, I do need to confirm something. To A, keep my sanity intact, and B, keep this video from being extra long, I will be talking about DLCs for Sonic games. So no Sonic in Little Big Planet, no Sonic in 2 Point Hospital, and no Sonic in Monster Hunter. Okay? Cool. So to technically start off this list, I want to briefly mention Sonic and Knuckles. While this isn't DLC in a traditional sense that us plebeians are used to, it definitely pioneered the concept to a certain extent when it's revolutionary lock-on technology. While this was just an excuse to keep a McDonald's promotion, it was a pretty cool concept that could have become more if SEGA cared enough. In case you don't know somehow, Sonic the Hedgehog 3's development was split to make a McDonald's promotion in time. Yeah, so the first half of the game, Sonic the Hedgehog 3, would be released on February 2nd, 1994, and the second half of the game, Sonic and Knuckles, would be released on October 18th, 1994, with you being able to plug in Sonic the Hedgehog 3 into Sonic and Knuckles to make Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Knuckles, making the game flow seamlessly into one another, along with making Knuckles playable in Sonic the Hedgehog 3 stages. This feature only worked on one other game, that being Sonic the Hedgehog 2, where you could play as Knuckles in the game. Putting any other cartridge on the game would just result in a no-way screen, where if you press A, B, C at the same time, you can play a borderline endless amount of Blue Spear stages. Again, this isn't DLC in the traditional sense, but it's definitely pioneering. So onto a real game with a real DLC. This was, funnily enough, one of the first video games to ever get DLC, as the Dreamcast was one of the first consoles to even have online support via DLC, with the content being downloaded to the VMU. And for Sonic Adventure, they went nuts making sure this game had extra content post-release, all the way from 1998 to 2000. Starting with the international DLCs, the first of which would be the Dreamcast launch party, where Station Square would be completely decked out in Dreamcast decor, and when said decor is jumped into, it would display a phrase thanking players for supporting SEGA and Sonic Team. The next DLC would be the Halloween Party DLC, which would be available from October 19th to December 28th, 1999. In this DLC, Twinkle Park would be decorated with Halloween decor, with graffiti saying trick or treat, and witches with pumpkins for heads telling the player trick or treat when walked into. Along with this, Station Square would be decorated with posters advertising the new revamped Twinkle Park. Next up was the Christmas Party DLC, which was available from December 17th to 28th, 1999. In this DLC, Christmas trees would be scattered throughout Station Square that would play a cappella versions of Dreams from the game Christmas Night. Funnily enough though, the DLC would actually soft lock players from beating Sonic's campaign, with a Christmas tree being placed where you get the ID card for Speed Highway, locking you from getting into the stage. And the final of these holiday-based DLCs would be the Y2K Party DLC. In this DLC, Millennium Rings would appear around Station Square and stages, which would display a message wishing the player a Happy New Year, asking them to support Sonic going forward. With this, the rings would also play Palm Tree Panic's Japanese theme. Station Square would also receive posters with Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles all running, smiling, and digging throughout the new year. The next set of holiday DLCs weren't holiday specific though, as the next two remained to promo a new Dreamcast game and add flair to the menus, with the first of these being the Samba GP DLC. This DLC was meant to promote the new Dreamcast Sonic Team game, Samba de Amigo, and so, to do so, they released a brand new track in Twinkle Park's Twinkle Circuit. This DLC had very little to even do with Samba de Amigo though, despite being a very small connection that the instrumental version of Supersonic Racing plays in the track, a song that appears in Samba de Amigo. The game would also let players upload their scores online, but nothing really came from this. And the last of these DLCs released internationally would be the Voice Packs DLC. In this DLC, you could download individual packs with characters' voices for menus. Funnily enough though, when Sonic Adventure International released in Japan, the DLC was changed to be one file, where a character's voice was randomly selected in the menus. Moving to the US, we would get the AT&T ODCM DLC pack from October 29th to November 19th, 1999, meant to promote AT&T in the official Dreamcast magazine. This was mainly a time attack contest where you had to race through Sonic Speed Highway, find treasures as Knuckles in Mystic Ruins, and Tails surfs through gates in Sand Hill. The player with the quickest scores would be rewarded, where 19 of the winners would get a free Dreamcast Dreamcast game. 15 of the winners would get a year-long subscription to the official Dreamcast magazine, and 5 of the winners would receive a year-long AT&T premium package. And also, I assume the player with the fastest time got the grand prize of all 3. In Europe, they would get the Reebok DMX Competition DLC, where players would race across a specialized version of Emerald Coast, where players would search for 5 pairs of Reeboks that Eggman had stolen from Sonic as fast as possible. With this, the players' times would be uploaded to SEGA servers, in which winners would be notified via email with their names published on the Sonic homepage of the Dream Arena site, with them winning a personalized Dreamcast pod and £1,000 worth of Reebok sportswear, with the winner being Neil Ridaway, finishing the challenge in 46.9 seconds. In Japan, they would get a lot more unique DLCs, with them even getting their own Christmas DLC in 1998. This would scatter Christmas trees around Station Square that when touched would show a message and play iconic Christmas songs versus the Christmas Nights theme from the International DLC. The next of these DLCs would be the Kado Matsu DLC, which is essentially a decoration for the New Year's. With this, these Kado Matsu decorations would be placed all around Station Square, which would show a message playing a traditional Japanese folk song. Funnily enough, this DLC had seemed to be lost for years, but was later found and bought from an old Japanese Dreamcast memory unit in 2019. The Hedgehog Hide and Seek DLC was released on February 12, 1999. This DLC had Famitsu hold a contest where players would find pictures of real hedgehogs after jumping into a red sphere in front of the train station. And after finding the pictures, the player would jump into a blue sphere to finish the hunt. The Yukawa Senmu QUO minigame DLC would run from January 22nd to February 22nd. This was another Time Attack X DLC, where players ran around the station square in Mystic Ruins in search for Mr. Yukawa cards, with Mr. Yukawa being the senior manager director of SEGA Japan, who also became a huge spokesperson for the Dreamcast in Japan, which apparently actually did help sell the consoles. 50 of the winners with the fastest times would end up receiving a 500 yen QUO card, which is basically the Japanese equivalent of a Visa card. And the last of these DLCs would be the Jewel Chow DLC packs, which would add new Jewel Chow aside from the gold and silver Jewel Chows. The game would add the Emerald Jewel Chow, the Sapphire Jewel Chow, and the Ruby Jewel Chow. A lot of these DLCs would be lost to time if it weren't for the Sonic community's ability to preserve stuff no one would normally care about. But thankfully, there's a mod pack out there to restore the contents on PC. And that's all of them. Every Sonic Adventure 1 DLC. This is arguably the game with the most DLC in this entire list too, and it's the first game with legitimate DLC. You could tell that SEGA and Sonic team were very into this new technology here. Even if I will admit they all kinda blended together, these DLCs rarely expanded outside of cosmetics for the hub worlds and the contests, which while cool, weren't doing much to add to the game. These are still neat though, and I definitely do appreciate them including these in the game in general. In comparison, Sonic Adventure 2 wouldn't get nearly as much DLC, most likely due to the team knowing they wouldn't be able to support the console after the game's release. All the game would get would be seasonal outfits in the United States for both Halloween on October 11, 2001 and Christmas on November 30th, 2001. These outfits have become pretty iconic in the franchise too, with them still occasionally using them to this day. Even Sonic still appears in recent games. Since the biggest console Sonic was on at the time didn't have DLC support, the 6th generation of consoles got relatively skipped when it came to DLC when SEGA went third party. But they would come back in the 7th generation with Sonic 06's DLC, instead of fixing the game. And they charged for this DLC. The first of these 7 DLCs would be the Very Hard Mode DLCs that you could purchase for $249. These DLCs would make you play hardened versions of levels featuring more enemies, playing the levels backwards, taking harder routes, etc, etc. The next of these DLCs would be Team Attack Amigo, where you play as Tails, Blaze, and Omega throughout multiple levels and even the Egg Genesis boss fight as Omega. Weirdly enough, the DLC was available on both consoles only in Japan and Europe, as for some reason the DLC was locked to Xbox 360 here in the West. The last of these DLCs would be the Boss Attack DLC, which would not only have the player play through hardened versions of every boss in the game, but will also add sub-bosses akin to Sonic Heroes, where you defeat waves of enemies that spawn in altered boss or hub world arenas. Overall, Sonic 06 did have some pretty neat inclusions for DLC, and I'm not against the attempt to add more content to the game. It's just, the game is a piece of shit. On March 12, 2009, SEGA would start adding DLC to Sonic Unleashed, with every country in the game getting extra acts for their adventure pack. These DLCs would keep releasing until June 11, 2009, with them all being available for $1.99, with them mainly featuring hardened versions of both day and nighttime stages, featuring some pretty fucking goofy and insane level design. The daytime stages would feature some stupid enemy placements, bottomless pits, hazards, etc. And as for the nighttime stages, they would feature tougher enemies, platforming, and just combat in general. I think overall this is solid DLC and should be the basis for Sonic DLC going forward. Around this time, from Heroes onward, hard modes have been a staple in Sonic games, and I personally think Unleashed did it best by being the silliest. And in 2010, SEGA would release their classic game, Sonic Adventure, for modern hardware. Funnily enough though, this game did indeed take advantage of modern consoles and its brand new DLC, by charging you for the Sonic Adventure DX content. Yeah. You see, this DLC would only lock 3 things from the original games, as besides these 3 things, this is literally just Sonic Adventure DX, not the original Dreamcast port with the better models or lighting. No. This was just SADX missing a few features from the original, with these 3 features being the 60 missions and Metal Sonic. This was honestly a crazy move, and the game would only have this on the console releases, as the Steam version of Sonic Adventure would be labeled as Sonic Adventure DX Director's Cut, including all of the DX contents. In a bit of a reference to Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Knuckles' lock-on technology, SEGA would do a similar thing for their Sonic the Hedgehog 4 lineup of games. All 2 of them. If both Episode 1 and Episode 2 are owned on the same console, the player would automatically receive a bonus episode called Sonic the Hedgehog 4 Episode Metal. This DLC would detail how Metal Sonic survived the events of Sonic CD. Like we needed an answer to that question? Like, you do know he's a robot, he could just be rebuilt at any point in time. Throughout the DLC, Metal Sonic would traverse all the stages from Sonic 4 Episode 1 in reverse order via a hard mode of sorts, featuring more enemies and obstacles. This honestly isn't bad DLC, as hard mode DLCs are seemingly going to be a constant in Sonic games for years, but adding a bit of flair to it by having you play in reverse and as Metal Sonic is a neat idea, especially when it's from the game that advertised itself on being only Sonic. With Sonic and SEGA All-Stars Racing being a, racing game, it left itself open for a lot of DLC opportunities, and with the game being a success, the first DLC it would get would be an exclusive pre-order bonus to Europe and Australia, as they would get an alternate cart for Ryo Hazuki, with the cart being labeled as Ryo F, as Ryo would now be in a forklift. I've never played any of the Shenmue games, so I don't exactly get the reference, but whatever it is, Shenmue fans, tell me in the comments. The DLC would later be added to the Xbox Live Marketplace and the PlayStation Store worldwide on April 1st, 2010. The next DLC would be the Metal Sonic DLC, which would not only add Metal Sonic to the game, but would also add a whole new track in the form of the Egg Hanger, based off the Death Egg Zone from Sonic and Knuckles, with the DLC releasing on the Xbox Live Marketplace on April 8, 2010, and on the PlayStation Network in April 2nd, 2010. And an Xbox exclusive DLC would release, that being the Unlock All Characters and Tracks DLC. It's a pretty self-explanatory DLC. These are all pretty standard if you ask me. They could have done a lot more in my opinion to expand the game, but these are fine and are neat to have, even if they are just limited to their HD console releases. Sonic Generations, being the game that celebrates 20 years of Sonic the Hedgehog, lent itself perfectly to DLC, with them being able to add a multitude of levels from Sonic's history, and even being able to add levels from Sonic's future if they chose to. SEGA could have taken advantage of this game's premise and used this to make a lifetime of Sonic content for the game, and they didn't. Sonic Generations has only one piece of content, that being the Casino Night DLC, which isn't a cool Casino Night level DLC. No. The Casino Night Pinball DLC. Yeah, this was initially just a pre-order DLC on all consoles, but on Steam it would eventually be available for free, with the Xbox Store soon following after. It's just pinball. It's really nothing special, but I guess it's a cool bonus, and it's in Sonic X Shadow Generations if you like this for some reason. Just like its predecessor, Sonic Adventure 2 released on modern consoles would have its battle content stripped from it on the consoles and Steam this time, with you having to pay. Same deal as Sonic Adventure DX though. It's still Sonic Adventure 2 Battle with purchasable multiplayer content in the Chow Karate. Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transform took a little more advantage of the DLC content, with it even launching a limited edition of the game that came with DLC of Metal Sonic and Outrun Track, with the DLC pack being available for purchase a month after the game's release. This time around, Ryo Hazuki as a character would be locked behind DLC, and lastly on PC only, Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transform would get Yogscast DLC, which were popular Let's Play UK YouTubers in the 2010s, with this DLC mainly being meant to fund the Special Effect charity, a charity that helps disabled kids play video games. Sonic Lost World will also feature DLC taking cues from Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed with its Deadly 6 edition, a version of the game that would include DLC of a boss rush reskinned with the Knight's Nightmarian characters. This DLC is pretty neat considering the huge connection between Sonic and Knights as franchises, but it really is just a boss rush. Funnily enough though, this was only one of the DLCs to make it to the PC port of the game, due to the other two featuring Nintendo IPs. Speaking of which, let's start with the Yoshi's Island Zone DLC, which is a free 2D stage which features both Sonic and Mario themed items. The next DLC would be the Legend of Zelda Zone DLC, which is a 3D stage where Sonic would be dressed as Link and run around Hyrule defeating enemies from the Zelda franchise. Most of the DLCs would almost be considered lost media, as the Nintendo Wii U eShop has closed last year, but thankfully there's a mod out there that ports both of these DLCs into the PC version of Sonic Lost World. To somehow convince people to purchase this game, if you pre-ordered Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric in the US, you would receive glowing outfits for all the playable characters, replacing their sports tape with glowing parts. Funnily enough, the Sonic Boom TV show would include these luminous suits that have nothing to do with the glowing suits from the game, but I just thought it was neat to mention it to stretch out this section of the video. Sonic Mania's physical release wouldn't just be the game printed onto a disc and sold in stores. No. The launch edition release of the game would be called Sonic Mania Plus and feature a brand new Encore DLC which will have the player play with no lives, instead having characters act as lives that you can swap between using the teleporter monitor and lose it at any time, with you only being able to get them back through the brand new pinball bonus stages which suck and randomized one-up monitors. The DLC also features levels being remixed to feature brand new color palettes and harder level design. But this DLC would also see the return of Mighty the Armadillo and Bray the Flying Squirrel as playable characters. Overall, the DLC was pretty neat. I'd say out of all the hard modes in Sonic, this is definitely one of the weakest outside of the special stages, which are now played in reverse order, but the new color palettes and playable characters are neat, as Mighty has his brand new hammer drop which allows him to slam into the ground, and his shell allows him to jump off of spikes respectively, and Ray has his glide, allowing him to fly through stages a la the Cape Feather from Super Mario World. Overall, for $5, the DLC isn't half bad, and is overall quite enjoyable. Sure, the Encore mode isn't special, and Mighty and Ray might not be the craziest characters to play as, but they're pretty nice to have as extras. Sonic Forces will be the start of pretty neat trend in Sonic games, with customization becoming a huge part of the franchise since this game's release. With Sonic Forces mainly focusing on the customization for the avatar, with its concept lending itself easily to DLC. The first of which being the SEGA/Atlas pack, which included multiple cosmetics based on characters from SEGA and Atlas games like Jet Set Radio, Persona, Puyo Puyo, Nights into Dreams, and Super Monkey Ball. There would also be an exclusive pre-order bonus DLC Shadow costume, featuring shadow-based cosmetics that were exclusive to the DLC. And the last piece of the cosmetic DLC would be a Sonic t-shirt DLC. Yeah. The next two set of DLCs would be non-Avatar related, starting with Episode Shadow DLC, which came with the game upon launch. This DLC would see Shadow traversing 3 altered stages from the original game. This would essentially be the hard mode of sorts, with Shadow traversing these levels along with giving the backstory of Infinite. He mad cause Shadow was mean, so now he gotta destroy the world and wear a mask.
Worthless. Don't show your pathetic face around me ever again. Shaking. Me? Afraid? No, I am not weak. I'm not weak. I am not weak.
And the last DLC for this game would be Super Sonic. Kinda self-explanatory, but the craziest thing about this DLC was the fact that SEGA tried to charge for it after a month of its release. Sonic fans bullied SEGA into realizing that it's stupid, and it's been permanently free since. Leaving Team Sonic Racing to die with no extra content for post-release, SEGA would add some minor DLC for Sonic Color Ultimate in the form of its digital deluxe content. The music pack would just contain remixes for Planet Wisp, so if you want to hear better music, you gotta buy that. Yeah, I said it. And the other would be the Ultimate Cosmetics packs, which would contain gold and silver shoes, Movie Sonic Boost and Movie Sonic Aura, and Movie Sonic icons for the Rival Rush. And lastly, if you bought the launch edition of Sonic Colors Ultimate, you will receive a code for the Ultimate Icon pack, which would feature some exclusive icons. Neat stuff, I guess, but honestly, charging for something like music is a little scummy to me. Sonic Origins, weirdly enough, has a bunch of DLC, but they're getting so confusing that SEGA had to fix this annoying as hell chart. The first of these DLCs would be the pre-order bonus called the Start Dash pack. This gave you 100 coins, a SEGA Genesis letterbox background for classic mode, and mirror mode pre-unlocked. Next up will be the Premium Fun pack, which would include hard missions, the SEGA Genesis letterbox background, character animations in the menu islands, camera controls over the menu islands, and lastly, character animation in the music island. The classic music pack, which features songs from the other 3 SEGA Genesis games like Sonic Spinball, Sonic 3D Blast, and Knuckles Chaotic. Overall, the DLC can be summed up pretty easily as pre-order the Deluxe if you want everything at launch, or buy the Premium Fun pack and Classic Music pack if you want everything later. Before 2023, because Sonic Origins Plus will release with the Plus Expansion Pack DLC, which not only included the Plus content like playable Amy in all games, Knuckles and Sonic CD, and the 12 Game Gear games. But this also came with the Premium Fun Pack and Classic Music Pack, which while cool, kinda fucks over people who bought the Digital Deluxe version, or DLC, before the release of Sonic Origins Plus. You see, if you're crazy like me, you spent $45 on Sonic Origins Digital Deluxe buying the DLC packs, but then in 2023, when buying Origins Plus, I'm double dipping into this DLC I already bought, considering this pack is $10. No $5 discount for people who already had the DLC or anything. Full price. Absolutely fucking great. And the DLC wasn't anything crazy. These bonuses are stupid, and some of the stuff should have just been in the game to add charm and to warrant that $40 price point. Playable Amy in all the games is kinda cool. She's just a reskinned Sonic though with a better insta shield, and Knuckles in Sonic Shit D is Knuckles in Sonic Shit D. Knuckles in a bad game. Funnily enough, Sonic Frontiers doesn't have a lot of DLC, with there only being 4 minor DLCs. The first of these DLCs would be the Explorer's Treasure Box, which would contain 40 of Amy's memory tokens, 1 Portal Gear, 10 Chaos Emerald Vaults, and the Explorer's Shoes and Gloves. The next one will be Pre-Order DLC, which is the Adventurer's Treasure Box, which contains extra skill points, 10 Red Seeds of Power, and 10 Blue Seeds of Defense. Overall, this is pretty solid content, but it makes Chronos extremely easy to get through, as after the tutorial, if you got the Digital Deluxe and pre-ordered this, the game unlocks all the Emerald Vaults on the island. And oh yeah, this is the only Sonic game to this day to lock the Digital Deluxe behind the Digital Deluxe. You can't buy the content separately. There was other DLC once the game released though, with the first of it being the start of the Newsletter DLC that SEGA has done since with the Sonic Adventure 2 Shoes DLC. This would allow players who signed up for Sonic Frontiers' newsletter to receive a skin in the game that gives Sonic his shoes from Sonic Adventure 2, which looks absolutely fucking awesome. Later, the DLC will become available on Steam and the Epic Games Store on November 21st, 2023. For the first time in a while, Sonic Frontiers will see the return of some region-locked DLCs, with there being 4 of these, the first of which being the Corone Gloves and Shoes pack for Sonic, which is an exclusive pre-order bonus from the Joshin Web retailer, which is pretty cute and gay, I'm not gonna lie. As a tie into that, there's also the Corone Sound pack, which replaced multiple sound effects in the game with Corone's voice, which was exclusive to Amazon and will totally not get annoying at all. And lastly on the Corone train would be the Corone Suki DLC from Rakuten, which replaces the Cocos with Corone Sukis. And the final region-locked DLC will be the Sonic Coco plushie emote, a DLC that came with the Sonic Frontiers Lucky Lottery, giving Sonic an emote of him playing with the Coco plushie. This is also exclusive to the Nintendo Switch version of the game, so that's even more exclusive for you. The next DLC would be the Monster Hunter DLC, which would give you brand new costumes for Sonic and a BBQ Spit minigame in the fishing portals, which gives you a shitload of fishing tokens if you get the meat cooked perfectly, especially on later islands. And the last DLC DLC for this game would be the Holiday Cheer Suit, giving Sonic a Santa costume to run around in the islands. Sonic Superstars keeps trucking around with a decent amount of cosmetic DLCs, especially focusing on LEGO, with the first of these being a pre-order DLC, which is the LEGO Eggman DLC. It looks really goofy. I actually really like this skin. The next DLC was the Modern Amy newsletter DLC, which was available via the Sonic Superstars newsletter and available for purchase once the newsletter ended for $149. One region locked set of skins were the comic skins, which were another Amazon exclusive. Kinda. You see, these things did get released multiple times internationally. 3 times actually. The skins were spotted as a part of Kroger's Points Reward Plus program, where you had to play a game and gain enough points to earn the skins, or buy $80 worth of stuff at Kroger. If you lived in the UK, Sonic Superstars would also get an Amazon bonus, with that bonus being the comic skins, even advertising it on the cover. And lastly, on Steam, the costumes along with all of the DLC were available for free for like 30 minutes once the game released until they fixed it, with this being the only way you could obtain the DLCs on PC, without mods of course. One of the free DLCs for the game would be the LEGO Sonic skin, with the next DLC expanding on this as the LEGO Fun Pack would give LEGO skins to the other 3 playable characters. I don't know why you'd buy this though, considering this is the Digital Deluxe upgrade with LEGO, which for an extra $10 you can get the LEGO skins for Tails, Knuckles, and Amy, a rabbit skin for Sonic, Mecha Sonic parts for the battle mode that you'll never play, a digital art book and soundtrack, and main menu wallpapers. Sonic would also get the holiday costume once it was released, which was actually revealed by Amazon on a gift box set, a shadow costume for Sonic, yes, a costume, not a skin, and lastly was the Retro Diner Amy, which was originally a part of an IHOP promotion where if you spent roughly $25, you could redeem 5 pan coins to unlock the skin. It was initially locked to the US and the console versions of the game, but was eventually released on July 1st. This was a lame collab too. They just reused existing foods and put Sonic renders next to them. Solid DLC region lock stuff aside though. Sonic X Shadow Generations also has a bunch of DLC already, with the first of which being the pre-order DLC. This is a Sonic Adventure Legacy Skin DLC for Modern Sonic, which looks super fucking cool. I am never taking this thing off. Next would be the Sonic Jam Legacy Skin for Classic Sonic, which was the newsletter DLC this time around, and also is super cool looking. And the biggest DLC here will be the Sonic the Hedgehog 3 movie pack, which released on December 12th. This features a Tokyo level and challenges and a movie shadow skin that is even voiced by Keanu Reeves himself. You automatically will receive the DLC if you buy the Digital Deluxe version of the game, with it also being available for separate purchase if you don't. And for console exclusive DLC, the PlayStation version of the game will receive Sonic X Shadow Generations Dark Beginnings as DLC, along with extended animatic animations, which looks amazing and honestly feels like the length the animation should have actually been. And lastly is the Extra Content Pack, which includes all of the Digital Deluxe content like the Terrio skin, digital art book, additional background music for Shadow Generations, and the bonus skill points for Sonic Generations. And that's it. Every Sonic DLC. Until Sonic Racing Crossworlds comes out next year and I cry myself to sleep.